When I'm thinking about standards-based grading, I have to find a method or a technique that assures my grades will be accurate, consistent, meaningful, and promoting of the learning process. To do that, I have to challenge some of the techniques that we use out of habit. So any of us who are working through a system that has adjusted to the industrialized era is very familiar with the 100-point scale, the practice of averaging grades over time. Well, those two techniques are problematic. They're incredibly punitive. So what scale can I use instead of the 100-point scale? I can't just adjust the 100-point scale. I've seen practices where we try to don't give zeros, let's just give 50s, all right? To try and stop the fact that there's 60 points of F, right? I understand why we might do that in theory, but it just becomes problematic. It doesn't work out because we're still averaging. Instead of trying to force the 100-point scale, which is punitive, to work, we can drop the 100-point scale and use a proficiency scale instead. So what's a proficiency scale? A proficiency scale has a 4.0, a 3.0, a 2.0, a 1.0, and a 0.0 level. But these are not like a rubric. So rubrics are used to evaluate student work. I might look at a sample of Billy's work and say, according to my criteria on my rubric, Billy's work is a 2. All right? But that's not what a proficiency scale does. A proficiency scale evaluates a task or a question and says that task or that question is a 2.0 item or a 3.0 item. So what are the qualifiers? 3.0 on a proficiency scale means that that task or that question is at standard. Exactly what the standard says is exactly in that task. What does that mean? If the standard says the child has to add, subtract, multiply, and divide with fractions, then a 3.0 item has an A, a B, a C, and a D, where they have to add, subtract, multiply, and divide with fractions. They're doing everything that the standard says. That's a 3.0 item. Nothing above, nothing below. A 2.0 item then is any one part of that. So if all they do is add fractions, it's a 2.0 item. If all they did was divide fractions, it's a 2.0 item. But it also includes prerequisites. So if they just had to recognize what a fraction was, that's a 2.0 item. So that gives us some range there. I know my special ed friends just got very excited about 2.0 items. A 4.0 item means it's any item that is a little more inferencing, a little more thinking, or combinations above standard. So if the standard says that the children have to recognize and apply a concept, a 4.0 item might be where they apply and evaluate the effectiveness of that concept. There we go. Now we have a 4.0 task or question. When I'm designing assessments using a proficiency scale, I really only make 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0 items. That's all I make. So what's 1.0 and 0.0? Well, a 1.0 item is a task where I provide help. So maybe the child comes in, we've all seen this, it's test day, the children are all sitting taking tests, and one child just puts their head down like this. And you know this child's not going to be successful today. Well, rather than waste that 40 or 90 minute period, you go up to the child and you say, if we make this a 1.0, do you want some hint cards? And if the child says yes, and then you provide, it might be where you have sample problems solved and you're looking to see, can they transfer from this sample onto what they need to do on the assignment? Or maybe it's definitions, maybe it's notes. But in some way you're giving them that aid so that if it was a matter of the child was just in a social emotional state or a disposition that wasn't strong, or they just didn't study the night before. You're giving them that opportunity to anchor and have a more meaningful experience than the humiliation of sitting through the test and not being able to perform. But it's a 1.0 level task at that point because of the hint cards. Now, just to be clear, children with IEPs, with clear adaptations and modifications, this would not apply. Their items with their adaptations and modifications from their IEP would still be 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0 items. But now we can talk about a 0.0 event. So a 0.0 task is where, even after that 1.0, where I reach out and I give the support, if the child cannot engage, and I might come up and I might actually cross their center line, their median, to try and neurologically connect the brain. I might take their hand, do prompting, delving. I am fully engaging with this child because what I'm trying to establish is, can I make the task one that they can actually engage with it? If I can, then I know I can get this child to be successful with the right materials and the right procedure. But if I cannot get the child to engage, then I have enough data and enough information to say, I need help. I need an intervention. I need to get this child a response. A proficiency scale 4.0, 3.0, 2.0, 1.0, and 0.0 is designed to give you transparent, honest information about where that child is and how they are moving toward the target or standard. With a proficiency scale, I can give transparent, honest information about where the child is toward meeting a standard in a way that the 100-point scale, where I might just say 50 or 0, is just not enough information about exactly what was going on in the task. Another factor that makes a big difference with a P scale is what it means. So if my child were in a teacher's classroom and got an 80 on the math test, well, what does that mean? Because then let's say they go and take a standardized test on the same standards and they don't do well. How could my child get an 80 in your class, but then not be proficient on a standardized test? This is a question that baffles many faculty. Well, when we look at the actual items and we say, oh, well, my child got an 80 on your test, but your tests were all 2.0 items. The actual test had 3.0 items. So my child was not actually prepared for everything that was going to be on that test. When we look at school test items, what we tend to find is a large number of 2.0 items and a large number of 4.0 items, but not these precise 3.0 items that tell me a child can do every part of the standard. The trouble with 4.0 items is that it works only if the child does well on the 4.0 item, because then I know they're successful. But what happens when a child is unsuccessful on a 4.0 item? I might have had multiple standards going on. I might have had multiple pieces moving so that I cannot tell, I cannot diagnose exactly where the child struggled. And because of that inability to do a diagnosis, I am struggling to give a prescription for what the child should do to improve their performance. So we want to be really strategic about our use of 4.0 items. I'm not saying don't do them, definitely, but don't use them for the diagnosis. I need that 3.0 item and that 2.0 item in order to become fluent in what prescription I want to give to the child. So the proficiency scale is something to think about. We use it to create our assessments. We use it to design the feedback we're going to give to our students about what they are successful at, what they need to practice, and what they still need to focus on learning.